Hey, and we're back for another episode of Gentleman's History Hour. I am Rob J. 10X.
Equality, EQ.
And a lot of people, we do record this show live, one take, whole style. So though it appears like we're having just a natural conversation, there's an extensive amount of research that goes into each episode. And it's not just me up here talking. I have advisors, and one of the key advisors is sitting right next to me. So Freddy, he's an intellectual, a historian, especially in the areas dealing with Moors, a brilliant mind, and an honor to have him as the first guest on Gentleman's History Hour.
What's going on, Freddie?
No doubt.
How you feeling, brother?
I'm feeling good.
All right.
I'm Freddy Jones, affectionately known as Freddy Jones. I got my Moorish name in the Moorish Science Temple 13 years ago under Brother Musab Yassir Bey. But, the people I grew up with know me as Freddy.
Oh, you got
Freddy
some Noble Drew Ali?
That's my heart, man.
Okay.
Noble Drew Ali.
Yeah.
Man, most definitely. Like, man, one thing I say, I met you just in a chance encounter because I was listening to a Martin Luther King speech at Sweet Lips. And in this speech, it was like why I opposed the Vietnam War. And Martin had said, refuse. And I was laughing at that all day. I was telling everybody, hey, listen to how Martin say, have you ever heard refuse said better? And I still asked that guy, hey, you ever heard someone say refuse better than this? And then from there on, he been nothing but a scholar, a gentleman. And you brought really a different perspective to research that we really don't see every day. You have an ability to, not only are you very knowledgeable, but you also are very user-friendly and very gentle with those who aren't in the information. Like, where did you kind of build that moral makeup of your...
And I appreciate that. I was telling him, EQ, the other day, that one thing that college did for me, the biggest thing was taught me how to research. That's very important, the approach. When he was telling me about a lot of the topics you guys were approaching, the biggest thing was the approach, because you can do a topic on U.P. Newton, whoever you want to do it on, but you have to kind of give a creative and a fresh approach to it.
Definitely.
Because people... they go through the same inculcation, well, let's talk about Frederick Douglass. Yeah. Well, let's talk about Frederick Douglass from the angle of his mom. You get what I'm saying? If there's a lot of literature or a lot of research on that, then let's look at it through the lens of his mom and then bring it right back around to who we know. You know what I'm saying? Because Frederick Douglass, just as an example, is a dynamic person. If you really want to know who he is, for example, look at the encomiums of Frederick Douglass from Ireland. And the songs and the poems they made about Frederick Douglass. You get what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So just attack it from a different approach.
Most definitely. That different approach, man, viewers will never notice, but like that Huey and Bobby episode, I mean, I came back to you and reworked that concept probably 7-8 times. It went from like Black Panthers to Huey to Bob, is Huey the first, person in activism to be a street dude to that. And it was a constant challenging of like making it a more unique and a fresher view. And, I think the ability to look at things from multiple angles, even with a lot of our talks. And obviously, we share things in real time as learning them. And we do take strong positions. One of my positions, at least personally, is that, the black man and masculinity is a great thing, you know what I'm saying? And masculinity is a healer for the black man. Yeah. I don't view masculinity in and of itself as good or bad, but I think the masculinity is needed. It's a necessity. I don't even think it's something that can be a good or bad thing. I think it's a requirement. Yeah. But you brought in, like, even with that conversation, anytime I take a position that is really based off what I feel like is right, you're able to come with the scholarly approach and bring in someone like introducing me to the work of Thomas Curry. Yeah. And that really taking my position and from that point, it going from an opinion to really forming a scholarly position. You want using like the scientific method as we discussed.
Because they've kind of bastardized masculinity.
Oh, man.
It's been bastardized to all these other names have been associated with it. It's toxic or it's this or it's... It can't even stand on its own anymore. It's almost like it's a negative thing to be.
Yeah, and I was surprised to learn from Thomas Curry that the initial, was it called hegemonic masculinity versus toxic and versus like some of the initial intentions behind it that we just have lost the connection to, you know.
But a lot of that is to kind of stultify the initiative of the brothers. Just like technology, power, we can talk about masculinity, but that in itself has no imperative. It's how you use it. Power is neutral. A fire is neutral. You know what I'm saying? You can use it to barbecue a person or barbecue food.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? You can use water to boil. You know what I'm saying? It just depends on how you use it with technology. Masculinity has its place. Masculinity is very important. But you have to go into feminism to understand the onslaught of masculinity.
And the narratives and who controlled the narratives and at what time was that narrative being controlled, because that's the importance of the history and what we talk about on this show is the context of history a lot of times shapes the narratives of where we are now.
Yeah, most definitely.
So especially when we talk about topics of feminism and masculinity and who's been shaping those ideals and where we are now. Because I don't think they were using words like toxic masculinity back then. No. But it evolved to where those are words associated. And a lot of times when it's associated with masculinity, it's associated with us as black men.
Yeah, exactly. Most definitely. And it's one of those things I think, too, I noticed that seems like as of in today's world, the objective argument is no longer made. Now, obviously, you know, hey, Black Panthers maybe didn't feel that highly about cultural nationalism. Yeah. You know, so we've always had opposing positions, but it seemed like in previous generations, the blackness was our supreme unifier. Whereas now it seems like we've been segmented. So it seems like overall, generally, the person's true alliance is to their segment of blackness, not to their blackness. So where, you know, James Baldwin could have been a gay man and Martin could be Christian, Malcolm could be a Muslim, but they were all black first. Yeah. Now it's like, I feel like when I deal and encounter people, it feels like their allegiance is, my allegiance is to black LGBT. My allegiance is to black women. My allegiance is to, you know, black trans, you know, and it's not necessarily like, I don't really.
Or they may not even use black first.
Exactly.
Yeah, no, that's true too.
But a lot of them try to escape the condition of blackness. You know, they try to find a different train to run on that's running. Like, you know, bottom line is if you're black in anything, you're going to be at the bottom. You know, transgender or whatever, you're going to be at the bottom. You know, so it's no need to try to escape black because it's not, you can't escape it. We got to deal with white supremacy. You got to deal with the institution of white supremacy. That's the entire thing. Even when we talk about feminism, you got to go into that.
Yeah, and the starts of it and doing the research and finding out, you know, who started this, who's over it, what's their history, what's their association with it, what was their agenda at that time when these things were being formed.
And I say, could you take me through like your information gathering process? Like, say something new happens, or a new cultural belief is out now, and Black Lives Matter, something like that is new, and you want to start researching this, and you want to start taking like the method you use. Where do you start? Where do you how do you build and formulate your positions on issues?
Well, in particular, the Black Lives Matter movement, I would look at their mission statement. You know, I'm with Black Lives Matter as a slogan. You get what I'm saying? Like, as the slogan. Mm-hmm. Black Lives Matter, too.
I'm on the fence with the slogan.
Yeah, but I get what they're trying to say.
Yeah.
You get what I'm saying? But in terms of their mission, I have to research who's involved in it, who's funding it. Yeah. You know, you all that's important.
You know, you've heard the term, Freddie, if you want to know the truth, follow the money. Oh, man. That's one key of modern research is following the money, who's funneling the money to what, and just getting that will clear up a lot of things. Yeah. I mean, even when, you know, you start looking at what goes on internationally and certain things happen, and you go and you research and you say, well, who's the person that's funding this? Yeah. Why is this person allowed to say this about this topic, but they're not allowed to speak out about this topic? And I think because the purse strings.
I think also, but even us as, you know, black men and black people in general, I think our scholarly responsibility has to be embraced at a higher level. You know, I can say now one thing that this show has done for me is I don't have to try to study Black history now. Like I don't have to write it down, study Black by default. I'm learning stuff, but I was a little bit, there's a little bit of shame inside to find out that on the Black Lives Matter website, one of their aims, was just on the page that they deleted, was, aiming to disrupt the Western nuclear family. Now here it is. LeBron James is a representation of hope for the Black nuclear family. Yeah. We celebrate LeBron James partially out because even with the success that he's had as an athlete, as a this, that, and the other, he still has been a committed family man didn't have a wife in the background that you never saw. Was a proud husband, a proud father. So for LeBron James to support a movement that literally aims, one of their beliefs is to disrupt the foundation of what you represent. But I guarantee, like myself, LeBron probably never went to that website and read that thing.
Research is important. If you attach yourself to it, you got to know. You asked me my approach to research. And the first thing that I learned that all scholars do is to study the etymology or the atom of the word. You got to break it down. Because when I wanted to understand God, I had to study it in every language, from Celtic to Latin I traced it. Like you said, follow the money, but my mentor taught me, if you want to know the source of a river, follow the river upstream.
So just a quick question, so, but etymology, is that like the history?
The atom of the word, the inception of the word, trace it back to its original language. Like if you look up the term Aisha, like the name, then you're going to go back into Isha, Aisha, Asia. You go back to the source, but then you'll learn that it's Arabic, go back further, it's Aramaic, go back further, it's Hebrew.
Tracing the root.
Yeah, okay. You got to get back to the root so you'll know what it is and see how it flowered out. Yeah, okay. And where it could have went off path to point it out. You know,
we use the word God. We don't know the root of where.
Okay. The God is a dramatic term. Out of Got, or G-O-T-T, or Gut. Okay. Circle of churches, a dramatic term. So if you know that, then we got to really do some research, because we like, okay, we speak in English, but God is a Germanic term. A lot of terms we use is Germanic. Church means circle. That's why they call all the sects of circles, broken off circles, or rebellious daughters, because it's only one Christianity, one church. But then you get Presbyterian, all these other religions, they're all a part of Roman Catholic. It's all a part of the circle. They're just rebellious daughters. Once you know that and you go back to the source, then you can study it better. Then you can see where it kind of had the little aberrations, or kind of got off track.
Yeah, when you get to the root of things, it'll give you more clarity.
Yeah, man. I say actually, man, I gotta give my boy Andy some pride. He pointed this out to me today, that how many business terms are rooted in like merchant words. So like currency, sale, when you buy something and you get something back, rebate,
birth, giving birth. That's a maritime.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. Not merchant, maritime. I'm sorry.
Maritime term, birth. It's a lot of maritime terms we use that they just put on land terms. That's why you gotta, when you ask about a word, you gotta know how we're using it. Okay. Because we can be talking about consideration as we talk about consideration, but if you talk about it in the jurisprudential, then that's something different. You know
and then in even modern times, as black people, we'll take bad, and bad will mean good.
Yeah.
You say, man, she bad.
Yeah. You got to put that in the record. So that's gonna be the scholarship for next.
Yeah, for the next time. Yeah, they're gonna look and say, oh, bad. So bad means good, but then bad means bad.
Exactly. Man, English is a hell of it's a interesting language, man.
It's a hodgepodge of a lot of different languages, but the most prevailing part of English is Latin and German. Okay. You know what I'm saying? Okay. That's why all of the jurisprudence terms are in Latin. Okay. You know what I'm saying? Like when you look it up, law, and they were like, this is Latin for.
Yeah, Latin for this or Latin. Yeah.
Like the brother Hashim the other night was talking about, I was representing myself pro se. Okay. In persona sub juris. But that's a Latin term. You get what I'm saying? They use certain languages for certain disciplines. Okay. You know?
Yeah. Same with the Greeks.
Yeah.
Wow.
A lot of the Greek words.
Yeah.
With the do you feel like the emphasis on study and because one thing I admire about like Bobby Seale and Huey P is they were studying with the goal of acquiring information that they could use to help their situation, and it seems like now none of our calls to action require research anymore. It's not there. We're not looking for legal statutes that say that, hey, when this is happening, then we actually have the right to do this, and we're going to take advantage of it. We become like a slogan based, and I think I think that's really hurt it. Like to me, like we were talking about earlier, which we can come back to. To me, arrested killers of Breonna Taylor, like, what does that really do? Like versus like doing real research.
It clears people's conscience to say, "Oh, I did something."
Yeah.
So that just kind of clears their consciousness to say, well, that was in this day and age, that's considered a form of activism to a certain extent. Or I just said it, or I brought attention to it. But in actuality, in the grand scheme of things, how was that contributing to the family or contributing to?
It doesn't stop the black bodies from dying.
Yeah, and I think like if we would have took that same slogan, we would have said like we take Breonna Taylor, right? Why would we not have our organizing bodies doing research, alerting us as black people of every state that has no-knock warrant laws, and then maybe disseminating information about the procedures, the offices, the kind of people we need to talk to make no-knock laws abolished nationwide, so that there's never another Breonna Taylor. Like there's no one like where's all the social justice money going? Like why have we not had I don't know, we don't have faith that, or we don't believe that like we're capable. Like I feel like a previous generation, they didn't see as big of a gap between them and the leaders and being able to have an impact.
Yeah, and it wasn't as much disruption. Now it's one thing happens and then it's disruption. And then everything focuses on something else. So disruptions sometimes are intentional. To take the energy and focus it on something else. And now a lot of times death is political currency in this day and age.
Man,
black male corpse is political currency.
Yeah, definitely.
You know what I'm saying? Like if you look at every time that we have a black male death, you're talking about maybe 300 a year versus. And it's not a battle, but versus black women dying at the hands of police like 30 a year. Black males is the most prevailing. We get this uproar, but nothing seems to, they never do anything to stop it. People publish books, they get famous, they get deals.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? You got new Jim Crow off of black body, off of black male corpse. It's like this, they have this love, this addiction to black male corpse because it keeps the wheels of industry turning, but they don't want to fix the problem. Nobody talks about fixing the problem.
What do you think about the ability, like one of the things like that I really admired about your position is that you're willing to go to the opposing side of your belief, study that information, and even if there's some valuable things on that side, even be able to look at them objectively. Is that something just you feel like is naturally in your demeanor, or is that something we have to try to channel as a people? Because it seems like we have lost that. Like you can't even say an objective, hey, should we look for a platinum plan from Biden? That's the fighting term. You know what I'm saying? Like, but what do you think about this?
But I respect my enemy. You get what I'm saying? If I could call him my enemy, then if he's worthy of being my enemy, he's a formidable foe. We're taught, to study our enemies in the Moore Science Temple. When I'm coming out of that, my mom was a Panther, my dad was in the FOI. And they always taught me to study the people that really have this power.
Yeah.
You gotta study them. One of our biggest enemies is Thomas Sowell. He's in economy. He's probably like 87 now. But he is so sophisticated and he's a brilliant
it's people that love him. It's people that hate him.
Yes, to the point where he couldn't even put where he lived because people wanted to kill him.
He has a lot of disciples that people don't like.
Candace Owens Larry Elder, disciples. There's a lot of them. But I went into him studying him because of a lot of the things that I was looking at on YouTube. He was making a lot of valid points, but when you dig down into him, you're like, okay, but the source of our degradation is culture to him.
Yeah.
He never goes to the source of the federal government of policies or anything. But then when you study him more, you see that Ronald Reagan wanted him to be his economist. He turned it down. You got to see who was funding him and who supported him. So then you start to being able to filter out, because if you don't have a scale, if you don't study your enemy, you're not gonna have a scale to be able to. There's a lot of people going to Jordan Peterson. We talked about that the other day, and you never know what he's talking about. He sounds like real good, but if you don't study people that oppose him, study the other side, the argument, the competing arguments, then you don't have anything to judge it by.
Yeah, I don't like the idea of throwing the baby out with the bathwater. Where you just don't, and a lot of times because of the groupthink mentality of cancel culture, and you're not allowed to even venture over to another side to hear what they're talking about. It's like, oh, one-sided, and we're not monolithic.
Yeah,
I'm not mad if people are supposed to not agree 100%.
Yeah.
But even within that 100%, it may be 5% in there of a Thomas Sowell, where I'm like, he's a brilliant mind as an economist. How can I take that and transfer that?
Yeah.
Now he may not be on the same path culturally, but that doesn't mean I can't learn. I can't
so
pick
much
from
stuff
some fruit from that tree.
Man. So much stuff from Thomas Sowell. He had one book called White Liberals and Black Rednecks. And even though he's an evil genius, if you get that book, you'll be like, okay, he'll give you the history of the Jews, he'll give you the history of who was colonized by who, why the stigma of nigger was placed on us when the northern white people looked at the southern white people as niggers, didn't go to church, high death rate. Everything that they put on us now, it was indicative to us, was, when you look at the old papers, it was the northern whites with the southern whites, but this who we were enslaved to. And we picked up a lot of that because the life expectancy rate, their biggest thing was disrespect. They'll go to guns quick if you didn't say excuse me, or if I was sitting here, you know what I'm saying? Everything. But if you look at that, that's the southern way. That's a lot of our mentality now. It's awful, it's not about it's not about money. It's about respect. And in the North, it was more so respect. I'm not respect, but money.
Yeah, it was industrial. In the North.
Yeah, and that was one thing that he revealed. If you delve into him and study, he would tell you, okay, this part of Britain migrated here. This part of Germany migrated. You get Anheuser-Busch up in the north. He'll tell you who we were enslaved to, who the blacks had to deal with, and the stigma got put on us from being enslaved by a certain type of person, illiterate person from Britain.
And that's extensive scholarship.
Yeah, man. And I think like the fact of like the whitewashing of our true history, that's been one of the most eye-opening things. And that's what, like, even learning about, man, I forget the scholar's name who wrote it, but the book, the 250 documented slave results. Slave revolts. Yeah. And like, and granted, like this is going from literally from the beginning of slaves. So if we're taught as children, hey, we were slaves, and there was this one guy named Nat Turner who read the Bible and then got inspired to revolt, but he died. I understand how Kanye comes to a slavery was a choice conclusion. Not because he's stupid, because he's ignorant. He's ignorant to that subject but for the most part, if you've been raised in America as a black person and you haven't engaged in some personal enhanced Black history study, you're ignorant to Black history. The fact that like we fought in the Revolutionary War. Like we literally fought for the freedom of this country. And we're offered. Some people actually were granted the freedom, but were offered enticed where if you help us fight this war, we'll help you, we'll free you, and then we'll help them win a war, and weren't free. And not like 10 or 15 of us, so like, over 20,000 black soldiers, But we don't like, when we read the U.S. history book, we don't read that part. They leave that part out. They make it seem like it was George Washington and his homies, and they went.
It's usually the history is written by the victors. And then they put it inside of the history book. So we have to unlearn a lot of the stuff that was taught to us in those history books, in those McGraw-Hill history books. It's like we were talking earlier about just with research and who controls the narrative. With a lot of those those autobiographies that were written, people that were in slavery, like a Frederick Douglass, those are written by the white abolitionists. That's propaganda.
Yeah.
It wasn't necessarily a bad thing, but
You
from
can
the
see how it
research,
could be
when you
used.
read it with an objective mind, you go back and you say, okay, when I read the narratives of Frederick Douglass, the slave narrative, and you get to certain parts, you're like, was that humanly possible?
But that's what critical thinking is important. You know what I'm saying? Like, you really gotta. But back to the slavery and the revolts, a great place to start on that is the Gullah Wars, because the Gullah Wars is like an all-encompassing thing.
okay.
And you'll find out about the Stonewall Rebellion.
Okay.
You'll see the Fort Negro battles in Florida with Jackson, the president.
You get into the Maroons.
Yeah, all of that.
It's
There was
been,
so many. And when I went to Atlanta when I was 19, I went to the Shrine of the Black Madonna in Atlanta. They gave me a thick pamphlet of every slave revolt when I was 19. And it was cut off newspaper clippings meshed together in a big pamphlet. It was this long. And you go through, and after you look at it, you're like, okay, uprising in 1661, 5 slave masters were killed. This, they burned down this. And after a while, what you will begin, once you start synthesizing it, and you looking at the big picture, you was like, this shit couldn't have lasted long, because we wasn't having this shit. But they'll paint us as obsequious, kowtowing
Roots, making the movies like
but it was
Roots.
coming. It was coming.
And then they just basically have erased every strong person who wasn't accepting that. Like, I'm gonna be honest, I had to be out of high school and probably a year or two into college before I ever heard of Marcus Garvey. I believe right now, if you did, and anybody watching this that has a child that's in high school, I will challenge you tonight. Ask your child if they know who Marcus Garvey is and can tell you where he was born. I guarantee you less than 10% of kids know that. And like any black person that has been shown to have either stood up to white supremacy or stood up to whatever opposition was facing him, anyone who's shown himself to be extremely strong, the ability to galvanize people, they all are pretty much like whiteballed from our historic story. That's why I believe, my personal philosophy is that, I saw a sister, she was complaining. There's a video that just went viral about this kid who's in high school, and the kids wanted to discuss Black Lives Matter, and it was stuff going on in social injustice, and the teacher didn't want to talk, and the kids were this whole back and forth thing, and people sharing the video. My personal belief is we should take Black history out of school. Black history should not have nothing to do with American education. Black history should be something that we take ownership of as Black Americans, and we're going to teach our kids Black history. Because Jewish history isn't a part of public school education. Asian history isn't a part of public school education. So why are we dependent on, the government that enslaved us to provide a curriculum that's going to empower our kids?
Well, Elijah Muhammad said, you can't, if they don't treat you right, you can't expect them to teach you right.
Yeah.
With the slave rebellions, this is how deep it was. When not the Nat Turner, but the Haiti revolt came, they were lynching and killing any black person that was on the coast of Florida as a hand helping to take stuff off the ship. They would kill them if they told other slaves from here about the revolt. When I look at the Tulsa riot, because I travel a lot, I look at a lot of old documentaries because we got access now, and you just can't find them on YouTube. You got to know how to access some of the stuff. You got to know how to put it in, but it's a lot of things on segregation, a lot of things on ABC back in '52. One of the things I learned was in the Tulsa, Oklahoma riot, if you listen to the actual people who existed at that time, they're dead now, but the last living people maybe in the 50s or the 40s, then you would understand why they didn't talk much about it. And we know more about it now. But back then, it was so shook that it carried over generations because of the melee, the macabre, you know what I'm saying, of the gore of the scene. You know, now we got maybe a couple people living that's in their 90s. But back then, they were really on some, you better not tell nobody.
Yeah. Wow.
And but to understand that, you got to understand what they saw and why, why this shit is so pervasive on her.
Yeah, we talk about trauma It's a whole different level
of
trauma that goes on.
And the thing, and also in part on the same thing with the trauma and the stories and how it's told. A lot of people with the KKK, for example, I just learned this really this week. The year after slavery was abolished, I think 1865-ish or something around it, the KKK was formed, and in their first year, they killed 5,000 black people. And then indiscriminately, women, kids, the whole nine.
Yeah.
So like to call something a hate group, you know, that's pretty much the standard. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Like, and they had to come, and it took. To be fair, it took the government having to go and confront them to even make them ease up off of this.
Yeah.
So it's just a
they was started in Tennessee.
Yeah, Tennessee. Yep.
Because 18 was around 1864, 1865, around that Emancipation Proclamation, Civil War. Yeah. The Emancipation Proclamation being signed. Yeah. During that time, and then that Reconstruction era starting in at like around 1867. 1865, 1867, having that period of time, and then a lot of laws even had to be changed. Like you had Voting Rights Acts in the 1800s. I mean, you know, a lot of these things, the Civil Rights Acts that they were fighting for in the 60s. It was going on in 1800.
Yeah. That's what Byron Allen stood on, the 1800 or 1860-something Civil Rights Act when he was going against Comcast and AT&T. He was pulling up that old law on the books. But it's funny you mentioned that about the lynching after slavery. It's a good book by Sherilyn Ifill. She's the NAACP national defense lawyer. It's called On the Courthouse Lawn. And she documents the amount of lynchings post-slavery and how they turned up on us. And they really, really, really turned up on us when they took the federal troops out of the South. Because the part of their punishment for going against the Union or losing was to keep they couldn't vote. That's why we had so many black people. We had black cities. You know what I'm saying? But part of their punishment was you couldn't vote. The federal troops had to stay down there for a minute. They cut a deal. The federal troops pulled out because they were keeping the white supremacists from lynching us. The lynchings went up not when we were in slavery, but when we got out of slavery and they pulled the federal troops out of the South. You know, I had letters from Athens, Georgia, from the freedmen that was begging the Union, the federal government, not to pull the federal troops out, saying that these white supremacists are gonna kill us. We fought too hard to get to this point. But it was a key election year where it was so close. I think it was a Harding. It was so close that they cut a deal and they pulled the federal troops out, and then that's when you see the lynchings go up in the 1870s, the 1890s, and the 20s, because they just had at it. The white supremacy just went, you know, you get Birth of a Nation, and you know.
Oh yeah, the making of the movie, which was propaganda. At that time, brilliant movie from a technical standpoint. But one of, or if not the most racist propaganda. That was helping the formation of the KKK.
But they were inserting themselves and lending legitimacy to what they wanted to do anyway.
Yeah, they showed it at the White House.
Yeah.
And I find it hard to believe. Like I've read and I've listened to Nat Turner's, I guess, last letter before. I find it hard to believe that was his words. Like that sound like somebody. You know.
Yeah, but even
K-rolled that drink on.
But then you had David Walker and the David Walker's appeal that came around that time. So we don't come from a people that were just some docile, letting people run over us. Yes. There were rebellions. We did fight.
But that's important to know, because when I was 19 and I got that pamphlet, I was like, man, we were killing. You know, they couldn't have maintained this forever. Because you looked at every little place, there was revolts here, revolts there. The Stoner Rebellion was the major rebellion in South Carolina. They had to end slavery for like maybe 10 to 20 years. They say, hey, look, we're going to stop this shit because of how we were killing white people. It wasn't that we were killing them, it's we were splitting their stomachs open. It was on some ritualistic voodoo type, and it was like, it shook them so much that they was like, look, we're going to stop this right now. Whatever you got, hold what you got. You know, we're not going to get any new slaves in, no nothing. But the Stoner Rebellion was one of the rebellions that they really, really keep under wraps.
Man, I found an interview on YouTube. I don't know how they did this because I didn't even know the technology existed at the time. They had actual interviews with slaves.
Yeah.
Just like late 1800s, and they were just talking about stuff. They were surprisingly like tranquil. It wasn't the anger that I would feel like, hey, if I went outside and someone jumped me and I did an interview, I'm like, man, like it was really kind of a level of simplicity to them. I don't want to call them like it. Well, I don't want to say they were very. This my point I was getting to is that I genuinely believe had the slaves been freed and we got our 40 acres and a mule, they went left and we went right, I think there wouldn't be racism today. I think we would be past that issue. They would be like, hey, they were there because these people didn't come off as like. They were angry and they wanted to be free, but they weren't vindictive. I think it was the Jim Crow. All the stuff post-slavery is what really put salt in the wound, what made it super personal, to this day.
That's interesting. That's interesting, bro. That's interesting. The reason why I say that is because when you look at slavery, by that time, who they were interviewing, it was more so, it was understood. Okay, we not,
Not saying like we co-sign slavery.
No, but it wasn't the first initial slave that they were putting into perpetual servitude was the rowdy, the ones that knew what freedom was for the first 2 generations. You know what I'm saying? They
had to make a point out of people.
Yeah, and they were willing to die.
This is a real tricky area, but it's like, how do you? I'm not gonna lie. When I read, there was a sister who wrote an article about her grandfather being a slave owner in Nigeria. Man, I read the article, I cried, man. Because I was like, I realized, and not only did she come from a family of slave owners, to this day, in that particular, I'm not saying, I haven't done the research to speak on this as a nation, but in her area, in her words, to this day, to be a descendant of slaves is to be looked down on. This is black on black. It was heartbreaking. And I'm like, so what role? And I think the common retort that most people have, well, we weren't engaging in chattel slavery. And that's kind of like the cop-out that's used. But like, how do we hold the people who sold our ancestors to slavery accountable to it? Or should we just kind of squash it?
No. Everybody must be held accountable. We got to deal with what's in front of us first. But make no mistakes about it. That's the whole point of the Ghana thing. That's why they try to they're placating to, y'all come here, y'all can do this. They admit, when we went to Ghana, they let you know that they have this whole program for us. They might not say because we sold you into slavery, but if you know what I'm saying? Yeah. But they know what they did, and it's understood. When we went to the slave castle and visit Elmina and the Portuguese castle, first thing that they did is the brothers that's out there hustling, they apologized.
Yeah, I mean, I didn't mean to interrupt you.
You got it.
But to bring it into modern times, if someone would watch movies like, from a propaganda standpoint, like New Jack City, and they watch other movies like Colors, and they watch some kid 100 years or 50 years may say, man, black people were selling themselves into the drug trade, which was another form of slavery, selling crack to someone else. Yeah. And then glorifying it, and then saying it. I'm not saying that's the equal, but in a modern sense, there's still a form of us selling ourselves into some form of enslavement.
But you have to go into why the need was. If I'm a drug dealer, then you have to. Why is it a need for drugs? What's going on? What's the mental condition, or what are people up against mentally for them to have a hankering or a need towards drugs? You see what I'm saying? Like, you got to look at it towards, in a sense that, okay, yeah, we were selling each other into slavery, but what was the need for slavery for? These people took over a land, they went and stole some shit, and then now it's a need for, not to say we're not going to hold them accountable because it was black on black. Yeah. And the way they were doing it, we got to kind of go into that too. of the history of maybe the Dahomey tribe against,
Yeah.
you know what I'm saying?
And there were
That-
people that actually did fight against that, like
Yeah.
Queen Nzinga and people like
Yeah.
that they were like, no.
Yeah, they wasn't with that.
Yeah.
You know, they were crusaders and they understood the rippling effects of it. But we got to go into that type of beef because look, I've been to Egypt, I've been to Ghana, I've been to Morocco. The biggest thing with Ghana is 70% of Africa is Muslim. Okay. You go to Ghana, surprisingly, it's more Christian. You go to there. We went there Easter, and you would think that you were at a Baptist church in Memphis. You know what I'm saying? So when you understand that, then you can understand how they had their own religions, but the chiefs or the kings ended up trading with these white and end up getting Christian names and end up adopting their religion.
Yeah.
So when you go into that, it's something I can't explain, but when you walk into it, you be like, okay, this is how this could happen. Because
It starts to make sense.
Yeah, because it's the whole switcheroo. They got you
colonization, man.
Yeah.
Colonization is heavy.
Man, I say, hey, one thing I say, and I want to study that further too. And I like to be fair, like I don't know what the answer should be. I'm not saying we should be mad at them, but I was just a gray area.
Yeah, it was kind of survival of the fittest at a certain point. It was like, okay, now I'm thinking it's a fair trade. It's like a indentured servitude.
There you go.
And you're thinking, okay, it's indentured servitude, and this is a fair trade.
They didn't know.
And then they're coming back and get more. Okay, and then all of a sudden, now they want me.
Yeah.
The brothers that were selling us over here, they didn't know the rippling effect because you said indentured servitude. It was indentured servitude until a certain point where they decide after Bacon's rebellion that, okay, y'all too powerful together. Y'all gonna be turned black. Y'all gonna be white. Lower class, we're not gonna do this anymore with you guys, but we're gonna keep y'all as perpetual slaves.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying?
I mean, and it still happens now with the French and that, and you know, a lot of times we don't deal directly with the continent, but if you start looking at the colonization that's been going on in the continent and the effects, the French, and then having even that the South African, the apartheid, and looking at who was in power and who was in control in these places. Or if you look at places like Jamaica and you hear people like Marcus Garvey, and you look at the people, I mean, not Marcus Garvey, but Bob Marley. And he's making songs and he's on stage and you looking at what was going on with the government. And you see people like Fela Kuti, you know, and what's going on in Nigeria. So it's a balance of understanding the history and understanding the rebellious side as well. And to this day, I still say it, we still have to look at it in a modern lens of we still get sold. It's just from a different way.
Exactly.
We still get sold. It's still a level of betrayal.
Yeah. But they look at it different, like it's not. But you got to transport a different lens. To get them to understand that. And what you were saying, like a lot of people got down with the program. It's called Prisoner's Dilemma. That either I'm gonna be down with this shit or I'm gonna be a victim of this shit.
Yeah.
If you look at what was going on in Africa when we were warring with different tribes, it wasn't that indentured servitude. I mean, perpetual servitude type of thing. We absorbed. Okay. After we conquered we absorbed you. You just become a part of the family.
Yeah, that's how you get a Frantz Fanon, Richard of the Earth, after seeing things like that and saying, okay, someone is coming into my house, kicking me out of my house, claiming my house as their house.
Yeah. It wasn't the stripping of identity. It wasn't the stripping of everything.
I was, one thing we was talking about earlier today, and we were talking about Mexican Americans, and really talking about one of the things that they do is when they come to America, a lot of them, and it wasn't just Mexican, Ethiopian, there was a lot of foreigners, like they don't come here and with the goal of assimilating into white culture. They come in here and they set up an economic base. And the economic base may be that, hey, we in this house, we have our cousins, this, that, and the other. You come here, I'm gonna get you on working wherever we're doing. Look, all you need to do, put in on the gas, contribute your 1/7 to the rent, and now you have a guy who, even though he's making $500 a week, which is poverty to the American standard, because of the economic base that's been established, $500 a week turns into $20,000.
Yeah, they're pooling their resources.
But they still have their identity. Mexicans aren't walking around calling themselves, John Jones. There's not like Asians aren't walking around calling themselves Robert Mayberry. They have that direct connection to what they're from, and I think there's something powerful in that. that allows them to not really even. I don't even know if they aspire to assimilate. At least maybe not the first generation. Maybe sometimes when the
The
kids
second
come.
generation for
Yeah.
sure.
Well, they still have a connection to that.
But they
to
were
what
up against a whole different beast, though. Like, you have to understand, it's a book called The Color of Wealth by Mercer Baradaran. And she gives a whole breakdown of the banking system. But in that, she'll paint a bigger picture of, okay, did you know that Bank of America was the Bank of Italy first? Okay, but it was the Bank of Italy to serve Italian people because they were boxed out of the banking industry like black people. But it wasn't an onslaught, we ain't fucking with you type of thing. It was to the point where they can work themselves into the larger, because you can't segregate money. Because if you open a black bank, it is foolish to think that it's going to stay black because that's not, money attracts money.
Yeah.
You get what I'm saying? Lending, mortgages, all that. You know, you're not going to stay black. Your point is to grow.
Yeah,
And that's what Bank of America, that's what Bank of Italy did. But we were never able to do that because what we were up against. We can give a lot of charismatic stories of a lot of different type of immigrant groups, but it was a total and understood collusion that whatever y'all do, these guys are gonna stay down. You get what I'm saying? That's why I don't like when they talk about how Madam Walker was the first millionaire.
Yeah.
Because my thing with that is, if it was a free market, if the market was free, she could have been a billionaire. But we praise her for being a millionaire, but she was cordoned off into a certain society where she can only sell to black people. Now the Jews could come over there and get her hair care product and go funnel it off to the bigger society and make billions off of it. She was limited, even though she became a billionaire. But think about what she could have done. That's why the first millionaires were black millionaires, were morticians, because nobody wanted to touch a black body. They were kind of millionaires by default.
Yeah.
You gonna get a million if ain't nobody doing shit.
No one wants
You
to
wanna
do it.
touch your body.
But I was gonna make the point of we talking about people coming from somewhere else, whether it be Mexico or whether it be China. When you still have somewhat of a connection and you come over, you still have those stories to where it's still a sense of pride in having your language and understanding your language and where it comes from, as opposed to having this cutoff. And then some of the people, we've been colonized, and then some of the people coming from the continent come here already colonized.
Yeah.
So that disconnect.
But it's a couple of books, and I can't think of it off the top, but it's books and articles in terms of that, because when you come, we were stripped of a nationality. The reason why I love the Moorish Science Temple is it was because it gave us a nationality. Okay. You know, a nation too.
Yeah, man. So let me ask you. You say your mom was a Panther.
She was a Panther.
Your
And my
dad was
a
NOI,
nation.
and you became. They gave birth to a Moor.
Yeah, but
Wow.
you know, but I walked through those.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? But the thing is I understood and I synthesized everything that they gave me. You know, and I just didn't stop there, but I understood why she could become that and why he could become what he became and how they
You
could meet.
take both of those, and then
I can see the bigger picture, because when I look at Noble Drew Ali's work, then all the Islamic movement came off of that.
That's something we'd have to have a segment on.
Clarence
Noble Drew
13,
Ali.
Carter, the Nation of Gods on Earth, FOI, all of it stemmed from the Moorish
Noble Drew
Science
Ali.
Temple.
Yeah.
You get what I'm
Even
saying?
some of the Malachi York.
All of that.
teachings.
He was a Moor. You know, he
It
called
started with
himself a Moor. He went through different
initially,
epochs, you know, but he called himself a Moor because they knew what Noble Drew Ali was bringing.
The science.
Exactly.
The science and the mathematics.
But what I was saying is those people that come from other countries come with a nationality, and it does give them some type of insulation or inoculate them against certain things, because they have an understanding. When you have a nationality, you have treaties. You have treaties, then you have way to govern against people. So if I'm in a car and I'm Chinese and I hit a white American or so-called white or European American, boom, then how does the treaty state we handle each other? Not just on some old second standard of law that they do to us. You know what I'm saying? They were called the Negro law or the Christian black codes in the 1700s because because we were stripped of that. You know what I'm saying? So they had to put a different colorable second. Well, this is how we're gonna deal with those people. They're like aimless. You know what I'm saying? They're just wanderers.
Yeah. One thing I would say to you know, to kind of sum up our segment is the importance. If we talk about some takeaways, knowledge of self. And we say that word and we say, okay, knowledge of self, knowledge of self. We have to really identify what that really means in understanding knowledge of self, because when you really dig, and we started this topic on research, just talking about research, and when you really dig deep, you have to look in the mirror, and it gets scary when you start digging into knowledge of self, especially when you've been told otherwise. When you've been raised a certain way, it can get spooky and it could get scary, because now you have to say, was what I believe in, I have to come to grips with a lot of the things that I was believing may not have been the truth.
Man, that's a hard one.
And I have to reconcile
Tough.
that.
Man.
I've seen brothers go through. They grow their hair out. They go, they go to a rebellious period.
Yeah. It is. It's that rebellious anger, because you say, "Man, why wasn't I taught this? Why didn't I know this?" And you have that aggression, but that knowledge itself is understanding that I have to learn from all. And we were talking about, the not throwing the baby out with bathwater and being, having this calm demeanor and study and understand how I can study this and I can study that. It's no different than an athlete that has to watch film. They said when the USA Olympic team was going to play Angola was probably one of the weakest teams. Michael Jordan was still studying the film. He didn't take it for granted. He still, even the teammate, hey, I still need to know how to defeat them. And to know that
he didn't let his opponent, his preparation wasn't conditional.
Yeah, there it is.
I think like we live, like I think one thing, one of my takeaways even from just our brotherhood has been that like in the development of, which is still a work in progress, but a scholarly position that isn't conditional. Because like one of the things that really stood out, in our just sharing information was that, hey, as for me and my brother here, look, man. Look, we don't hate broken clock. You know what I'm saying? He's also known as Jason Whitlock.
But I can respect that though. I love that.
And we could we'll go to the other side. We'll share a Trump. He'll send me a Trump video to watch. I'll send vice versa. And I think what happens is, looking on the other side, we've been able to pick up different nuggets that we don't see on the other side. So when I sent you a video to me and him, we found some jewels, and I was like, check this out. And you sent it to our guys, our brothers at the spot. Yeah. All the brothers on impact. It was like a bomb went off. For the minute the video said Jason Whitlock, it was like, you with this iPhone, you see the 3 bubbles. Yeah. Like it was 3 bubbles and distance coming through. But you still you actually watched the video before you came to your opinion, and I really appreciated that. And now I remember the other day you were talking about Dr. Wesley Muhammad, and you were saying something about his belief in that marijuana, has chemicals in it that cause certain things. And my instant response to it, like a human being, I heard something I didn't like. I was like, "No, man, that ain't true." And
got defensive.
You said, "I got defensive." You said, "No, you can't have a comment until you study it."
Yeah.
And I was like, that was such a, man, that was one of the most, one of the best corrections that anyone has ever given me, because you were right. Like, how can I form a judgment on this scholar?
And it's cool not to have an opinion about something until you become informed.
Yeah.
We live in an era where everybody got an opinion
pick
about
a side.
something.
It's a pick a
side. Yeah, but study it first.
Yeah, pick a side.
Study it.
Pick a side, and then the cancel culture of, okay, we'll throw everything out with this person. Yeah. So, but knowledge itself, man, is it's a very and knowledge itself doesn't stop.
Yeah. There's no terminus for knowledge.
You continue to learn. So,
hey, we got y'all a double album today, man.
Yeah. Hey, for the people that's out here viewing it, man, this is Gentleman's History Hour. We do this weekly. If you on YouTube, hit the subscribe button. This is a casual conversation and delving into research and history. And, if we were sitting here talking about sports and athletes, it's a certain passion. We want to engage with that same passion when we talk about history. And that same enthusiasm when we talk about people that influenced us.
Yeah, most definitely. Hey, we'll give Freddie, man, a closing word. But look, hey, if Vlad can have Trey D on there every other week, we're gonna have this brother. Hey, get used to seeing him, man. We're gonna have him on here a lot. So man, we let you close, man.
Yeah.
You can follow me at Moorish Emperor on IG, Brother Musab Yassir Bey on Twitter. I enjoyed myself. I love
thank you,
chatting with the
brother.
brothers. This is
Yeah,
I
one
love
love,
this
man.
platform. So
Yeah.
and you guys are having me back. I'll
Oh,
be ecstatic to
definitely,
come
Most
back.
def, most def. This
Yeah.
ain't a one hitter, nah.
Yeah.
All right.
Peace out, y'all. If you're watching this on YouTube, man, hey, y'all, hit the subscribe button, hit the like button. This is Gentleman's History Hour.